resume recording. Again, thank you all for being here. And I'd like to first throw this over to my colleague, Camille, so she can introduce herself and talk a little bit about what she's been doing.
Hello, everybody. As Allison said, my name is Camille Perezselsky. I'm the Director of Philanthropy at the Washington State Historical Society. I have been with the organization for about 9 months now. It'll be a year in August, and I absolutely love it. I come from a higher education background, most recently with Washington State University, based out of Seattle. And the Washington State Historical Society is probably a little bit different than most of your organizations. We are a weird hybrid of a nonprofit 501c3, but we're also a trustee organization of the state, basically tasked with protecting its treasures, promoting its treasures, and educating people about its treasures. We are a development team of 2 under normal circumstances. I usually have a philanthropy and membership coordinator position that we're currently recruiting for. So during these strange months that we've had, I've been a team of 1, so it's been a little bit of a challenge. But it's been great too, because it allowed me to speak to a little bit of that member experience and what we've been able to do as far as work within that process. I currently am quarantining in the Twin Lakes area of South King County with my 18-month-old son, and I am also about 20 weeks pregnant. So it's just been a wild ride, and I know every one of us has a unique story about this experience that we're going to remember and tell our family, and hopefully contribute our ideas to the Washington State's collection efforts around this COVID pandemic. So I'm going to go into and tell you a little bit about what we've been doing in the philanthropy department to help kind of navigate these uncharted waters. So I'm going to start out with what have we been doing with our donors, right? So with individuals, I've been making a lot of stewardship and wellness calls, just checking in, seeing how people are. It's not a sell. It's not, we're not asking for donations. It's more just like, hey, how are you doing? Everybody's got a story, right? And this is so much of what major gift officers do, is really about connecting and talking to people. And so this opens up an opportunity for us to reach out to our constituents, see how they're doing. And honestly, it's been really helpful. We've gotten some membership renewals out of it. We've gotten some extra donations that have come in. We've even got one pledge for a bequest at a later date. With that, I'm working with our executive director, Jennifer Kilmer, and reaching out to some of our top level donors and having a little bit more of a personalized experience with, just giving them an update on what we're doing. I think that's really important, especially, I feel like we're kind of coming out of the phase where we needed to tread lightly when it comes to philanthropy and outreach. I think that we're entering into that next phase where we can be a little bit more direct about our needs. And so that's kind of how we're looking to reshape our messaging. It's very modest, it's very informative, but it's also, we're looking to really highlight that there is a need, and there's going to continue to be a need from our stakeholders. We're sending out handwritten notes. We are doing our best to, again, create a personalized experience, which is, in the best of times, it's a wonderful thing to do. But now that, we have, I don't want to say a captive audience, but, there's a lot of people vying for your attention, right? So one thing that we're doing is, with our individuals, is I'm reaching out to our donors and our members and inviting them personally to participate in our COVID collections efforts as a stewardship tool. And I know that every organization is going to have a unique selling point that they can connect with their constituents on. And for us, that's this particular project, and basically offering up an opportunity to do interviews with me, or depending on kind of the person, with our director and our head curator. And again, it's all about personalizing that experience. We are also moving forward with our late spring appeal. Again, modest is the key word here. We want to express that we know that these are challenging times, but every little bit's going to help. And so it's really about informing and providing that that thankful stewardship that we all know that donors and our members like. Now, moving on to members, we again are just communicating and doing our best to just tell them what is happening at the museum, tell them what is happening at the Historical Society, keeping them informed, and really giving them a platform to give us feedback. I'm really pleased to say that we sent a letter, and this is something for folks to consider. I'd be happy to share the letter too if there's anyone interested. We wrote a letter to all of our members and all of our lapsed donors and lapsed donors in the past 2 years, just saying, hey, how are you guys doing? These are the things that we're working on. These are the things that we think are important, but we want to hear from you about what your needs might be. What questions do you have? What thoughts do you have on how we might move forward in these uncharted waters? And feedback has been just overwhelming. We've gotten probably 15 responses to this letter directly to our director, which is above and beyond what she has seen from letters in the past. She's really quite pleased with the engagement, and I think that again kind of speaks to it's the stewardship side. We're not making an ask. We're cultivating our community, our sense of community. We are moving forward with member renewals. We didn't send out any last month just because of the fact that we don't have big old printers at our houses, right? So we figured out a plan to send out our renewals. And I have, some information I can share with folks about that if they have questions about the process. But really it's because we have the capability to process them. I can process them here at my home. And then we have a fiscal staff member that goes on site once a week to pick up the mail, who is printing these things. And then we have another staff member stuffing the envelopes to give her a job to do. So it's really great. It's really helpful. And I'm so thankful that we have the staff that can help with that process. We are also running an additional lapsed member mailing to pick up folks who generally renew upon visit. There's Colleen Schneider. Know Your Own Bone is her blog, and I'd be happy to send a link out to that. She is putting together data weekly about audiences and visitors and how they feel about coming back to the museum. It's very data centric, and she put together a great look at members and donors and their role in the recovery efforts. And it was pretty incredible, actually, the percentage of folks that tend to renew upon visit of the site. So we are working to make sure that we capture those folks who would normally have come and seen us and come into the museum and made their membership renewal. So they're able we're able to pick that up and not lose it. When it comes to member benefits, we are extending our member benefits by 6 months from the date of reopening. And we're hoping that folks will feel generous, so I'm thinking 3 months after this reopen period, we're going to send out another kind of appeal letter that speaks to any particular needs that we might have to cover, the cost of keeping our programs going, keeping people in employed status, or covering the needs to make sure that we have a safe environment for visitors to visit. Because, as many of you are experiencing, sponsorship dollars are drying up. Foundation, money is becoming more restricted in some spaces just due to needs being realigned with like humanitarian needs, the top of the pyramid in this situation. And then we are also, when it comes to our foundations and sponsors, we are reaching out to current and pending funders about changes in the program, and then providing them with information and access to any of the plans that we have moving forward. I know we're reaching out to a specific cohort for one of our late summer programs in the coming week and a half to see if we cannot pivot some of these pending proposals to cover changes. And now, it used to be a summer festival event, and now it's going to be an online marketplace. So just finding ways to make sure that we can still get them involved. Maybe it's as an annual partner, and so their logo will be on our website for the whole year versus, you know, just this one event. So just finding ways to kind of pivot. And when it comes to using online tools, we as an organization haven't had a lot of success when it comes to Give Big or Giving Tuesday or any of those kind of online giving days. And it's not something that we invest a lot of time in, just because, again, we haven't had a good return on investment. And I'll just be honest with you, at the institutions I've worked for, it's kind of the same. I know that some organizations, if you have a very digitally engaged audience, or if your audience is used to being communicated in that way, it's probably a little bit of a different story. But for us, it's not a good avenue for support. So you won't see anything from our organization about that. But we are using our e-news. We are putting out specific messages of gratitude and stewardship online to make sure that our current and past sponsors are feeling the love, especially our business partners. We're running an ad in in South Sound Magazine and the South Sound Business Magazine, just thanking people who've supported the heritage sector and are known supporters. And so we're just using this as, again, an opportunity to make people feel thanked and loved, and doing our best to highlight the good that's happened in our community. And then to kind of wrap that up, we are also making sure that in our communications with individuals and our stakeholders, we're letting them know about the extended tax credit that was a result of the CARES Act. It's, kind of gone up to a $300 line that you can deduct. And so making sure that folks know about that. And then opening up opportunities to talk about donor advised funds, because that's another avenue that's still open, as that money has already, that money in those DAFs hasn't changed due to the economic situation. So looking at ways that we can explore that.
Awesome. Thank you, Camille. Great. I really appreciate it. And also, before I introduce Amy, just remember, as questions come up, feel free to just type them in the chat box. Make sure that it's to everyone, and then I will keep track of those, the chat box, and when we've done sort of these introductions, I can get going with those questions. So now I'd like to turn it over to Amy.
Here. Hi, thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Amy Wigstrom. I am the sole proprietor of Wigstrom Consulting here in Tacoma, Washington, and I have 20 years experience in nonprofit as both an executive director and fundraising and mop pusher across the theater stage, the gamut. And so I've been consulting for almost 4 years now, and I have a good 6 core clients here in Pierce County, and then I have some longer distance clients throughout Washington State, and we do a lot of Zoom calls. So I have many clients right now that are small organizations, like many of you might be, with a lot of volunteer base, but not a lot of staff base. And so I'm working really closely with them on their current plan and how to look at it from a manageable standpoint, since they don't have maybe multiple staff members or even a board that's used to doing fundraising. So one of the things I've been consulting on a lot is what Camille talked about, which is stewardship. And then this is a great moment for stewardship activities. One of the things that Camille was talking about was that sort of engagement piece. And I've told all my clients, imagine how you can bring them into your space virtually. If you can draw them in to have that emotional experience that they have when they're in your space, somehow find that opportunity. One of my clients is a retreat center, and so they took a walk through the property. It was a gorgeous day, and you could really find yourself in that space again. And that gives the donor that sort of emotional response and nostalgia. That's why they were involved in the first place. So think about offering them those peeks into your organization, whether it's something that they wouldn't normally see as a visitor or donor, or if it's something just to remind them about how it even smells in your facility, so that they can kind of be brought back into space while they can't be there. I've also been talking to a lot of them about this feeling of guilt around fundraising right now, because there's so much going on and so much sadness in the world. I do a whole session with board and staff about the health benefits of philanthropy, because there's science behind giving and scientific evidence that giving actually has an emotional and physical response in your body and improves your health. And I think you know what this feels like when you make a donation that you, like you're at the Habitat for Humanity breakfast and you're watching this family and you're like, I have to do more than I told my husband I was gonna do, and you're at a bigger check. And then there's something that wells up inside you that makes you feel really good. Well, there's science behind this. So I try to coach my clients out of this feeling of gluttony and guilt right now to say, philanthropy gives people meaning in their life. It makes them feel good, it makes them feel connected, and that they're doing something beyond their own current situation that can really elevate them out of an emotional state of insecurity or perhaps anxiety. And so I try to sort of shift that paradigm with my clients. So if you're in that place where you're wondering whether it's a good time to ask or not ask, you might sort of test that with yourself. The other thing I've told my clients right now is, if you're feeling a little bit hesitant about philanthropy right now with your donors, pick and choose a couple of your most trusted donors and ask for their advice. Advice is a great stewardship tool. And so there's an adage in fundraising, you know, ask for money, you get advice, ask for advice, you get money. But it's a great way to involve them as somebody who's really a stakeholder in the organization, to say, here's where we're at, here's what we're thinking of. How would that feel for you as a donor? And it may just give you a little, measuring stick for how to move forward. I think that I don't want to replicate a lot of what Camille said. She had some really great nuggets, and I was taking notes because I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to say the same thing. But I've been talking to a lot of my clients about really taking stock of who's a major gift prospect and who's a virtual donor prospect. And one of my clients had an event they had to cancel, and so they were just going to send out a big email. And I said, wait. First contact all of those people who were your biggest paddle raisers last year and the year before, and see if they would make an outright gift rather than responding to an email. Because I think there's a lost opportunity if you treat all the donors in the same way. So they're going to go after a handful, 34 donors, to reach a $5,000 goal. And then they're going to leverage that in a virtual ask and a mailing for matching gifts. If they can reestablish their event in the fall, then they're just going to use that as seeded money for the Raise the Paddle at the event. And so I just want to say that out loud, because there's sort of a rush to do all this virtual fundraising, and there are people within your donor base that will give more if you're asking them directly and personally than if you just include them in some sort of giant e-blast or social media campaign. So just take a moment before you feel that urge to race forward to do that work, and then try to assign who's the best person to contact them, and really what is that message you're going to send to them. I loved a lot about what Camille said about the cause and communication. This is even more important, to communicate the needs that you have and how they can help at this time, and communicating any shifts in plans are really important at this point too. But there's a tipping point in communication right now, because I don't know about you, but I get probably 6 emails a day of any entity that I've ever given my email to, telling me what they're doing about COVID-19. And it does feel a little bit much at times. So pick and choose, try to send positive messages along the way, little celebrations. And again, bring them into that space that they so adore, wherever you are. I think this is a really good time for you to take stock at any donor software that you might have and see what the capacity is. Check in if you have donor software or event software, if you have any add-on opportunities or any modules that you're not utilizing that would be virtual modules. This would be a great time to kind of look into that, especially if you have to push an event into a virtual event or do some online auction work. I have a couple clients who just didn't realize that their software systems had that capability, or that they could add something on very reasonably to be able to have that functionality. Looking at my quick little notes here. Also, I have many clients who are sort of looking at phases of virtual fundraising and the different kinds of fundraising events. There are many organizations locally and statewide that are doing these events right now, and it might behoove you to just join one of their events. So I have one coming up next week that's a virtual breakfast here in Tacoma. It's a $25 ticket, and they actually deliver a box breakfast to my door, and then I join virtually to see their keynote speaker. So there's so many different modes right now on how to do this, and a lot of the current database companies are really interested in your business. I don't have any pitch for any specific one, but they are all pivoting and trying to be responsive right now. So just take advantage of the resources you have and move forward from that way. And I think Camille covered so much, did a great job. So I will say adios for now and let the other speaker speak.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. That's all really good advice. And just so that you know, I know that Camille mentioned that she would share the letter that we sent out, and Amy has mentioned a few things that she could share. I will include all of that in a follow-up email to you all. So no need to like panic about that. We'll make sure that anything that kind of comes up in this conversation that we can just send you a link to, will do. So awesome. So I'm going to send it over to Robyn, who is hot off a pretty successful pivot, since that's the word of the day.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Robyn Hall. I am half of the fundraising team at the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust, which is an environmental nonprofit that's actually the coordinating entity for the Mountains to Sound Greenway National Heritage Area. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's a year old as of March, although our nonprofit's been around for 30 years. And I'm only a few years into fundraising, but I used to work in public programs for a few small museums back in Boston. So my heart is with you right now as you're grappling with these closures. So obviously Camille and Amy have had wonderful advice about general fundraising strategies, and I do have some points to share there for what we're doing, but I'm specifically here to share our successes from a recent event that we put on, a virtual event that we were unprepared for, but managed to throw together to great success, thankfully. So I know everyone here is probably from organizations of different sizes and missions, but I'm hoping I can convey some generally applicable takeaways for you. So normally in April, we would have our annual fundraising breakfast, and losing that puts a pretty big crater in our income, because that's about a quarter of our operating expenses every year. And it's normally, a 500-person event happening downtown. So obviously something we had to cancel. And once we knew we had to do this huge pivot into a virtual event, we tried to focus first on, okay, what are our goals for even doing this? Because keep in mind, we had no online fundraising experience prior to this. We have a Facebook page, but we never really, we're just getting into our social media channels in depth, and we just don't fundraise online really, except for email campaigns, and have heavily relied on, mailed bulk campaigns prior to now. So for this virtual event, we decided, we would like to reflect the spirit of that event as much as possible, because it's a very warm gathering normally. And we wanted to still create a space where people could come together, since they're not getting to be literally outdoors in our public lands where we would be encouraging them to go normally. And that we would keep the original date. So that was April 9th, which we kept it to that date, but that definitely truncated the amount of time we had to problem solve. So I think we had about 3 weeks to figure out how we were going to put it on, and ultimately landed on doing a Zoom webinar, which I became an overnight expert in. I tried. So it ended up being the simplest format for us, because of obviously the video sharing capability, and in webinar format, there's more security around controlling who's sharing their video, and we could still have guest speakers on, and had more staff present. And it was pretty easy to sign up for because it doesn't require people to sign up for accounts and things like that. And we could record it like we're doing now. So, and share it with our audience, which means we have this nice collateral piece to share after the fact, and has actually been a nice engagement point, especially for people who are new to us, because we frankly had been kind of an invisible organization up to this point. So it's funny, the points about who you're virtual fundraising for, how much you're doing, because we're new to that anyways. And this is the most exposure we've ever had or tried to have. So it's just been a giant shift. And yeah, our webinar was successful and we met over our goal. And so I can share some general takeaways I think could apply for those of you who are considering trying to replicate your own fundraising event, or maybe you want to postpone it and or you want to try to reproduce it somehow or in a different online campaign. I think they will be relevant because even though the original format of our event was quite large and maybe not relevant for your groups, once you distill that into a virtual event, it actually becomes quite small, quite short, and only involves really a few staff members to execute it. So it is manageable for smaller groups, I think. So I think what helped us be successful is that, and I'm sure everyone knows this already, but we approached it from the perspective of everyone's a fundraiser now, everyone. Probably should have been doing that ahead of time, but it's great for an organizational cultural shift. So we set up our board and staff for success by providing them key points and messaging templates as much as we could. And for the first time asked people, including our volunteers, as like a volunteer activity for them, since normally they'd be planting trees, to set up Facebook fundraisers, which is something that was new to us, for each individual person to set up their own fundraiser, which worked really well, and meant we encountered new people. It unlocked new networks that folks we'd never encounter otherwise, and resulted in some new small donors. It was important to have fun with it. If I can share the link with Allison if she wants to share it, so people can see the format after the fact, and how it resulted. But it's definitely a humor-filled episode, and it was important. I mean, we just had to put perfection aside, and that really opened us up to just being creative in our problem solving. And we were upfront and honest with our supporters that this was, we were completely uncertain about the outcome. We didn't really know what we were doing, and throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall to see what worked. And people responded very compassionately to that and were gracious with us and responded to that call to just all get through this together. And otherwise, I would say the Facebook fundraisers are an example of this, of just being willing to try new tactics, and it's a great opportunity to do that. We also did like online fundraising through merchandise for the first time, because some other nonprofit I'd encountered last year had used a website called bonfire.com that handles all the printing and shipping of t-shirts and sweatshirts, which, as it turns out, people really want to sit in right now. I'm wearing a sweater today. It's been a while. I've been in sweatshirts for a while, including the one I just bought for my campaign. But that was a new fun thing to try that we had talked about for ages and just never really moved on. So I would recommend just using it as a chance to try new things. And, if you are still trying to reproduce your event as much as possible, a script was certainly helpful, and practicing as much as you can in a short period of time. So, a lot of the process was managing expectations, but, you can take comfort in knowing people are going to be gracious with you right now and want to help. So I'm certainly available to provide advice if anyone's trying to do a virtual event, literally, about, how we put that on. But just in general, in terms of how our fundraising has shifted, we're certainly taking a lot of it online in a way we haven't before, but we're also, that's kind of spiraling out of the breakfast success. So people who weren't aware of us before are now. So we're trying to, to leverage that. And I definitely went into the process feeling internally conflicted about whether this was an appropriate time to ask for donations. But the response we've gotten from our community, new and old, is that people are looking for ways, like what they can do and like the action that they can take right now in this time of like ultimate limitations. So it's really brought us closer together as a community. And we've seen it as a great time to try all those strategies we keep just putzing around about wanting to do. And so, you know, like we've been talking about taking our fundraising online. And so we got thrown into the deep end, like all of us have, to do that. But I definitely recommend, if you were considering doing that, this is a great time to try to build that community, because people are looking to be a part of it. And especially for organizations with collections and museums. And when I'm thinking back to the public programs I wouldn't get to put on right now, you know, getting to share in that, like Amy had said about entering that space, I think is a lovely thing to do, and to fill that need for others. Otherwise, I guess I'll just conclude with my gung-ho professional development hat, which is also a great time and a great opportunity to let your staff or board or volunteers try new things, try out new skills, surprise you with skills you didn't know you had. Turns out there's video editing skills on our staff that we were not aware of. Thank goodness. But, you know, I think it's just it's created space for ingenuity and made us a more effective team in just trying all these new things, as scary as they feel when we're dipping our toes in. So yeah, I'm happy to provide any guidance on doing virtual events. I've only done one, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Robyn. I think your mantra of put perfection aside is really key. And I don't know about all of you, but again, I'm doing all of these new things for the first time. And when you're a kind of natural perfectionist, it's very frustrating because I'm not doing any of them as well as I would like to. But you're absolutely right. I'm finding that folks are pretty gracious. And I think if we don't take ourselves too seriously, then there's a lot of room for some kind of endearing moments to happen between organizations and the public. So thank you. Thanks so much, Amy. So we are getting some questions on the chat. So I'm going to start throwing those out to everybody. So the first one was for Camille, or really any of the three of you, to talk a little bit more about the details of the extended tax credit under the CARES Act, the changes to the charitable giving deductions. Do you have any more details about that?
You know, I don't have a lot of details. I mean, basically what we are doing is just putting language in our outreach letters saying that the tax deduction has been raised to $300, that, you know, talk to your financial advisor about how to make sure that for people that's relevant to how make sure that's within their plans. I think it's just more of an awareness thing. It's different now since those tax changes that happened in 2017, was it? Or the most recent round of when they cut the itemized deductions, like that made it difficult for a lot of just everyday folks who give, you know, $50 to $500. It took that benefit away from them. And I think this is a way that the government has tried to encourage smaller donations, you know, giving back that incentive to a wider group of individuals. And so for us, it's really just about communicating the option and just making sure that people are aware. I don't think that it's never been a big driver for folks, and at least in my experience, but I think it's also just important that they know that it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Amy, do you have anything to add to that, or sort of suggested language around that?
Yeah, I reinforce what she said, that I think it's gets a little dicey if you try to pretend to understand all of these legal and tax implications, and just to point the donor to a direction where they can get the right information, rather than to accidentally make promises that your semantics might have leaned into. And also, I also am of mind that people don't make contributions necessarily because it's tax deductible unless they're very savvy financial donors whose, you know, financial advisors telling them they need to do this. And so I always kind of come back to what is the donor motivation, and usually tax deduction is not on the top couple lists of why those donors are being motivated. So I think there's opportunity for a tagline, but I don't think that's the major push.
Okay, great. So this question came, and I'm sure it's partly in response to the fact that our own Capital Heritage Projects grant process is open right now. But the question is, what are sort of the pros and cons of continuing fundraising for large capital projects right now? I don't know which of you might have some thoughts on that. Yeah, Amy.
So I have a client in the middle of a capital campaign right now, and they are continuing. In fact, they got 2 $5,000 gifts last week. And I think it really depends on what your project is and who your donors are. They went to a seminar that was held by a really well-known foundation that does a lot of capital campaign giving, large amounts, who suggested that it would take 12 to 18 months to kind of recover and get back into capital projects. My client is not having that situation, which is really lucky. They're moving into their public phase here in the fall, which of course does tell you something about where they are within the capital campaign phase. It may be difficult to launch one at this point, but it really is it's so unique from organization to organization. Also, it does matter right now who is your leadership in the campaign and what they are to the community. That makes even more of a difference right now than it may have in the last former 3 years.
Yeah, so sort of the personal relationship piece of it gets kind of elevated.
Absolutely, and also kind of who they are to the community is really important right now. So
yeah, that's great. And I know that there's some concern about organizations that have completed the phase 1 of our capital projects grant, and now they're worried about making matching funds. I see a few head nods there. So that is a question that I have put to Lissa Kramer, who's the manager of our capital projects grant. So if that's something you're worried about, follow up with me, and I can make sure to get some feedback and some thoughts from her, because obviously it's different landscape now than when everybody started writing their applications 4, 5, 6 months ago. Okay, great. So let me keep moving. Oh, so I thought this was an interesting question. So Camille, you had sort of talked about, again, kind of the parts of the process in processing memberships and requiring sort of the support from staff that's able to access the building, and just generally, I guess, wondering if this has motivated folks to consider pivoting to digital processes for those kinds of development tasks versus manual, and what kind of thoughts or questions you've been asking around that.
Well, funny you should ask. I am giving a presentation to our leadership, our leader, I should say, this end of this week about, I had a meeting with QZM. I don't know if any of you are familiar with QZM, but they are a provider they have both an app that basically is like a virtual tour, visitor enhancement device, I would say, but then separately, they have digital membership cards. And the great thing about this that I learned in my one-to-one with their sales guy is that their digital membership cards are, so like, if you go and you have a electronic boarding pass on your phone and it goes into your iWallet or your Samsung wallet, basically your electronic wallet. Well, that's what your membership card would be. It would just be attached, you'd be able to pull it up. And so that's something we're really considering. I can tell you, I don't obviously work for them, no vested interest, but the things that I found really interesting about going towards that digital process is that for us, it would be less expensive than sending out our rinky-dink, flimsy, they're not even the nice plastic cards, guys. They're like the really flimsy, we print them in-house, they're black and white. Nothing special, nothing to write home about, but they do produce a barcode that can be scanned by our Blackbaud system. Well, this QZM digital membership card app, they work with Blackbaud as a preferred provider. So for us, we are looking at switching to a digital membership. For us, it's a good time because we're also going to be launching a new website. So I think that they can kind of go hand in hand. The challenge is going to be, for, again, this is speaking from our experience, that our largest membership group is dual seniors, followed by seniors, followed by families and individuals. And so I know a lot of our seniors might be more comfortable, you know, having their physical card or doing things. A lot of our members have been members since, you know, 1987, 1993. So they're kind of might be set in their ways of doing things. So it would really be for us a need to educate everybody about the opportunity, you know, get the communications out there. This is what we're doing. And then creating the opportunity for folks to, if they do want a physical card, for it to be something that they can pick up on their museum visit, or something that, you know, once, we'll knock on wood, once we have our membership coordinator back on board, to be able to send those out. And, you know, for us, I'm envisioning going back to the old school, like pre-printed, but then you like fill in the person's name, fill in the date, you know, like for us, I think that would work. I'd be happy to share, you know, information about, again, this Museum app. I'll also say, do another, again, don't work for them, but going to do a pitch that they are producing weekly webinars that I've found to be super helpful, from everything from member donor engagement to what folks around the country are doing to reopen their facilities. And when I was talking to the fellow last week, he said they have something like 3,000 people sign up and listen to these webinars. And I've found them to be very, very helpful. So I'd be happy to share those resources. But if you would all have, and I will say the budget for us, like, I think he quoted us, it was going to be $2,700 a year for membership. So like, that's everything that, and it allows you to send out push notifications to members and folks, letting them, so you could send something out saying the museum's at capacity. If there's, you know, if you have to do ticketing, that's like time ticketing. So yeah, I think that that's a direction that I see us heading in, just, you know, to kind of facilitate the social distance, but also from an economic standpoint, it's going to be a lot faster, and it's going to cut down on, you know, paper, and it's generally cheaper. So
yeah, thank you. And a lot of those Museum webinars I've been posting to the COVID-19 resource page at the State Historical Society, and I'll share that link with everybody as well. There's lots of materials on there. Also, just one other thought on this topic. I was formerly on the staff at the Fort Nisqually Living History Museum, and their foundation uses the Apricot one, whatever their management system that does their website. I'm sure some of you also use it. But really, basically, they stopped printing membership cards, and when members came in to visit the museum, they would just look them up in the system. So that's an even more kind of stripped down, bare bones kind of version. And I think generally folks were pretty comfortable with that, even though they had been getting a physical card for years. It just, I don't know about you, but I tend to lose my membership cards. So having one isn't necessarily an advantage for me. So another question that came up, and I don't know if this is something, Robyn, that you all did as part of your fundraiser, but just about silent online auctions and what people's experiences are with those.
So I had some discussions early on when we were with other nonprofits in the area, when we were trying to figure out what we were going to do for our event. In some ways, it was a positive that we didn't have an auction and didn't need to replicate that, but it actually might have made things easier, because there are a lot of platforms available for a fee, of course, that and are becoming more popular now to allow you to do both silent and normal auctions. So we have a few partner organizations that have had success doing, basically just keeping their galas online. I'm sure a lot of people came across, I think there's an organization called Upaya that had a pretty popular blog post circulating back in April about their gala success. So unfortunately, I can't speak to the efficacy of doing a silent auction, but I have heard success stories in Seattle itself, and in the region, and that there do seem, I think classy.org has seemed like a common option that people have been using to do those auctions online.
Yeah. How about you, Amy? Have any of your clients had any successful online auctions?
Not my clients, but there are quite a few organizations here in Pierce County that have tried this. The Rebels did an online auction. And I can see a few other organizations that I'm involved with, but I'm not their consultant, are going that direction. I can tell you that our local AFP chapter, Association for Fundraising Professionals here in South Sound, is doing a seminar on that coming up, and I'll make sure to get the link on virtual fundraising, because they've had a couple of sessions now on it, and so I can provide at least that resource. But like Robyn, I get all sorts of emails about different auction software platforms all day long. People hoping that I will sell those along to my clients. My clients right now, I have one that was supposed to have an auction in August and two in October. And both of them are very shy right now about procuring auction items. So they're backing away a little bit about that. Now, if you're a museum and you have work to auction off or swag or something like that, but locally here are, we have restaurants who used to give who are closed down, and small businesses that give to the auctions that are closed down. So they're really feeling like right now isn't the best time to procure. But as things start to open up, that might change. I talked to one of my clients about the golf courses are going to open up, so maybe we can go that direction. But right now, none of them are pursuing online auctions.
Yeah, I can see how that'd be a hiccup. Just don't auction off anything from your collection, people. You all know that, right? That's a big no-no. But yeah, absolutely. And just Amy, from the user experience, I know our daughters go to school together, and their elementary school has done some online auctions, and I love it. I can sit at home in my pajamas, and when I see somebody outbids me for that thing I really want, I can go right back in there and up my bid. So I think it's been really successful for them. Great. So another question on this sort of online donations, wondering if there are ways or platforms that don't take as much out of the donation. I'm not saying that. Let me just read it. Is there a way to do online donations without a fee being tacked on, taken out from the overall total? Our website is through Squarespace, and they use either Stripe or PayPal, but I'm wondering if there is something else people have done to set up online donations without incurring the fees.
For us, I think that was kind of one of the that was the final nail in the coffin for why we didn't do Give Big. Is it Give Big today? Yeah. Was that it was a 5% fee that 512 just took right off the bat. And I know that Facebook, yeah, it does through the Network for Good. I think they charge 4.5%. And so for us, like that wasn't a great motivator, because we found that when you do use those secondary sites, they tend to capture the donor information and they don't necessarily share it with you. And that's one of the issues for us with donating through Facebook, is that you don't know who gave. You just get a check like 3 months later for $450 from 5 donors. Half of them end up being your staff. So you're like, why do we do this? So I guess to answer your question, the more you can do to push folks to go to your site and embed links directly into your site, or to direct them to contact you if you have like an email and you could take a credit card payment over the phone, that gives you a chance to connect with the individual to help build some rapport. And so I guess, like, depending on your member base or the project that you're doing, if there's an opportunity to connect with them directly or to do things directly through phone or email, that could be a good option.
Yeah, great. And Susan just made a really good point in the chat. I know I've experienced this with some giving that I've done, is that some online platforms will allow you to ask the donor to up their gift to cover that fee. And I think generally, anecdotally, what I've heard is that's usually really successful. When given the option, a lot of donors will recognize, that they don't, this administrative fee puts a burden on the organization and kind of ups that gift. So that's really great, and a good reminder. So there's also some folks have just been posting some other thoughts and ideas in the chat. So this chat will be saved as well, and I'll share that with everybody. So as people have mentioned things, you'll get a copy of that 2. We are almost out of time. Are there any last questions for Amy or Camille or Robyn before we sign off here? I'll give you a second. So just a reminder to join the Facebook Heritage Outreach page. You can get to it via the Washington State Historical Society, not the State History Museum. Confusing, I know. I'll send all of these links. I'll make sure to collect all the wonderful resources that our 3 presenters have mentioned and get those out to you. I may actually wait and do it until Friday. We do have another digital engagement program coming up this Thursday that I think a lot of you will also be attending. So even if you're not attending, I might just send out all the resources from both of those in one giant email. I don't know, I haven't thought about that too much yet. Or maybe I'll send 2 emails. Who knows? It'll be a surprise. But I will definitely make sure that you get all of this. And stay tuned. I'll be announcing before the end of this week and taking RSVPs for a session a week from today about planning to reopen. And then a week from Thursday about collecting COVID-19 materials for your museum. So those are the things we have coming up. If you have ideas for other topics that have been really kind of weighing on you, let me know. I know a lot of folks have had trouble communicating with their boards. There are a couple of cases of kind of MIA board members out there, and so board communication right now I think has been a particular challenge for some groups. So perhaps a Q&A and a gathering around that topic might be useful. But if you think of others, do let me know. You all have my email address, and I am here to support you and try and find resources for you. So thank you so much, everyone. Special thanks to Amy and Camille and Robyn. I really appreciate your time, and everybody stay well. I hope that we'll do this again soon. Bye.